The difficulty in some of the areas of Distorted Travesty is the real reason you made this game, because secretly you feed on the frustration and suffering of humankind.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure you've seen Raukau suffer and cry his way through some of the areas. Those are the best times for me. Okay, but no, really though, so the real thing though, is I've always really liked challenging games, and it only felt natural to try and make something of my own. Of course, always making challenging games came with a lot of difficulty in trying to balance things. So that was, and that just comes with time and practice, listening to lots of feedback and lots of what people say. The feedback before Raukau picked up the game was really good, but then when Raukau found it, the comments I got that I saw from a lot of people was, well, you've probably seen some of the comments, pretty harsh, but a lot of them are right, and I got a lot from that. That was really nice to see that. And the other thing is about one of the reasons I enjoyed Raukau's Let's Play of it is his constant talking. And what I mean by that is he's always, from what I take from it, is he's always voicing his thoughts, and he's very sincere about everything. From a feedback standpoint, it's really, really good to see a case-by-case thoughts on like every part of the game. That was really nice. So really, no, I don't really feed on the frustration. Maybe a little bit.
So, what's your favorite video game?
The Zelda series is definitely my favorite of our list, at least all the franchises, but no Zelda games ever actually made it to my favorite. God Hand is by far my favorite. Last game made by Clover Studios. We now know them as Platinum Games, the guys who made Bayonetta, Vanquish. But the main reason I like God Hand is not the most spectacular game, but the reason I personally like it is, like, the game was really no more, no less, a street baller. That's all they said it was, and that's all it was. It did exactly what they wanted it to do. It was reviewed horribly by quite a few places. We won't go into IGN's review.
Well, don't trust reviewers. They don't know what they're talking about.
I usually cross-reference my reviews. But yeah, everything in the game just felt right. From the dodging to the combat itself, it all just felt right.
What's your favorite anime?
This may or may not be a surprise, but I actually don't watch a lot of anime. Most of my anime these days comes from the stuff that my roommate Jerry shows me. Back in the day, I actually watched a bit of Trigun. I kind of enjoyed that, especially the first half and the second half kind of switched gears there. The second half was a bit more dramatic there.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh man. I'm not going to talk about any of the movies, because like The Castle in the Sky or stuff like that, those are always really good.
But, Miyazaki?
Yeah, Miyazaki stuff. But my favorite one, though, of all, like, definitely is Code Geass. It's kind of like a political theme going on there. And I really like the character Lelouch and the way they set it up. My other one that's kind of really, really close to Code Geass, though, is Spice and Wolf. I don't know, have you heard of that one?
Oh, yeah, actually, I've seen that one.
Yeah, that was another one my roommate showed me. It started out the same way every other anime is that he showed me, which I'm like, this sucks. I hate this. I don't want to watch this. And then I watch it and I like it. Spice Wolf was all about economics. Well, you know that since you've seen it, but it's a lot of fun.
It's not like any other fantasy I've ever seen.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to take that turn. I was thinking, oh, okay, some wolf girl is going to take her to the north. And then it turned into something completely different, caught me by surprise. And when Lauren starts going into things about the economics and how you can kind of pertain that to today, any economy, was really nice.
Favorite manga? Oh, wait, you just said you don't watch anime.
Just a super short answer. Yeah, I don't read a lot of manga. I've checked out one visual novel by a friend of mine, which was pretty awesome, actually, but that's it.
What about webcomics?
Webcomics? I used to check out VG Cats until the guy stopped updating once a year.
He's pretty irregular at updating that one.
Yeah, and then there was one other that I really enjoyed that I don't know the name of. I can't remember. I usually check like once a month. He updates like once a week. This guy who lives in an apartment with some cat and some squirrel girls.
Oh, El Gunish Shive.
What's it?
El Gunish Shive?
No, not that.
Not?
I know that was called. No.
You found another Squirrel Girl comic? I shouldn't be surprised. It's the internet.
Yeah.
What is the worst game you've ever played?
Oh man. So this is going to be a little bit jaded. I mean, I've played worse games probably, but my most fun favorite is Star Ocean 3. It's a PS2 RPG. Like everybody knows about it for some reason, which I guess because it's so hyped up. It was also bad timing. At that time, I was starting to kind of dislike JRPGs. There was just a number of things. The combat was kind of fun at times. It was easily broken, but it was an interesting concept. I'm not going to go into combat. That's kind of a weird area. The thing that I didn't like the most, though, was the characters. The characters were boring. Very, very bland and I like things to be more character-driven. That's just, again, that's a personal thing. That's nothing against the game, but I just found the characters just boring. If I have boring characters presented to me, I'm going to find the whole experience boring. This is why I like things like Sam & Max or something like that, where the characters drive everything. Or like the Lunar series, Lunar Silver Star Story.
Oh, yeah.
I love that game. It's amazing.
That's a great game.
Yeah, and it's just so colorful, and I like the way it's just done.
You ever try Lunar 2 Eternal Blue?
Oh yeah, I got them all. That was the complete collections and all that. The other thing about Star Ocean 3 was the story, which that plot twist, won't spoil it, to me felt like it made most of everything before it completely pointless. God, I hated that.
I agree with you. I felt like they retroactively killed the series. I'm amazed that they managed to make a fourth game after what they did in the third.
Yeah. I think the fourth one was something like a prequel. I'm not sure. I only played about maybe 3-4 hours of that and decided, no. Don't get back into it because you spent like 60 hours in the third game for some reason. I beat everything in the third game. All the side bosses.
Even the 250-something floor bonus dungeon?
Yeah, I did that because I fought Lenneth at the end of that. That was the only boss fight I ever lost on. I lost twice to it.
Lenneth and then Freya, right?
Yeah, Freya was even easier. Because when I got to Freya, I found out a little nifty thing. You know those items, how you could stack of accessories on your weapons?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's an accessory that boosts power and defense by like 30% or something, so I stacked like 8 of those on a weapon. And then I realized my character was unstoppable if I took that Berserk skill off. Like, she literally did like 0 damage, and I'm like, well, okay, might as well use this in the game. So I don't know, I think I kind of broke the Freya fight, but Lenneth was legit. I hadn't quite set that up yet by then, which is weird because Freya comes right after Lenneth.
What is the most memorable game you've ever played?
Man, memorable? There's actually 2. Definitely Shadow of the Colossus. To me, Shadow of the Colossus has like amazing storytelling, but it has like very little dialogue. They didn't use dialogue to tell the story, they used the atmosphere itself and the music. The music was what the character was feeling. When there's nothing going on, you don't have any music. It's kind of just this, you're running around the field looking around. You get into like an important area that it has that mysterious music playing, and you think, well, what's going to happen? You get a little nervous. That's kind of what I felt when I was playing. And then when you see the Colossus that first time, again, the music doesn't play until he sees you. When the music starts playing, it kind of gets a little creepy, a little disturbing, which again would be what the character would be thinking. You're the one that gets this thing that's about 1,000 times your size. That would be pretty frightening. And then when you get to climbing on it, it picks up, so it's exciting. There's no getting out of this now, so there's just, you gotta go at it. And then of course when you take them down, the music kind of goes to this like a sad tone. Maybe the character's like thinking a bit of remorse. This creature didn't do anything. Just here, and I killed it because some weird god told him to do so. To me, the music told the story of what the character was feeling. I kind of like that. And then the other game is Silent Hill 2. I have I just want to hug that game sometimes. For the same reason as Shadow of the Colossus. The atmosphere told the story. There's a lot of symbolism in the game. I don't want to give away anything in case someone's listening or you haven't played it and want to experience that. It's an experience. Very, very tense game at times. A bit dated, so I don't know, maybe it may not work well today, but I played about 3 years ago and it still felt right. I recommend if you're going to play it, to play it at night, all the lights off, if that's your thing. I like to really get into it. I don't like the feeling of being scared, but with those, like, it's kind of like a fake scare, I don't like that.
What is the hardest game you've ever beaten?
I look for games that are really, really hard sometimes. There's 2. Yeah, there's always 2. The original Battletoads, that's probably an obvious one there. Yeah, beating that one, that was ridiculous.
You're probably the only person on the planet.
See,
I've seen the Dark Tower, but Good grief! Beating Battletoads!
St. Pete Kitty has a Let's Play of her beating the game. So there you go. There's someone else. There's a couple others. Yeah, and the motorbike level is not the one that gets me. It's this one. I think it's right before the end. Right before where they have those little bikes with the wheels.
And the ball chasing you.
Yeah, the zip line thing. I don't remember anymore. That level gave me a ton of trouble. Always. And you had to fight that thing at the end that was incredibly easy. Well, the combat in that game wasn't hard. It was the obstacles. Which is actually same as the other one here, Ninja Gaiden. All three of them. All three of those games are ridiculous. The second one's not quite as hard as the first, and the third one, I don't know. Yeah, the first one's probably the hardest. The second and third one give you these weird powers that kind of offset things a little bit that you can use. Except for the third one had those weird limited continues system. They just wanted to hate the player. I don't know, there's always the final boss sequences in all three Ninja Gaiden games I got. Specifically the first one.
Well, not the final boss. The final boss was a pushover. It was that thing before the final boss.
It goes back and forth, just fires flames. I have it now. I even remember the pattern now. There's a little loop you can do, and it's super easy. But I mean, trying to figure that loop out.
I never just. Gah. I never found a loop.
Stay your way through it. Yeah, the respawning birds thing. Previous interview, I said something about hating birds, which if anyone's seen my blog lately, well, not quite that true.
I think you said you wanted to take a piss on any bird you saw, if I remember right.
Yeah.
When you started making Distorted Travesty, where did you start?
Oh man, so Distorted Travesty is kind of like two games together and a piece of another game. Way back, I started making this little platform on Game Maker, just kind of toying around with some things. It was kind of meh. Then I started making this like combat engine, which I was originally going to do this kind of like Zelda 2 remake. I had this crazy combat engine for it. And I was like, well, this doesn't really feel like Zelda 2 at all. This is dumb. So my platforming engine was kind of broken. Wasn't very good back then. I might make a really, really good one now. Then I found this one guy, Martin somebody. I don't know how to pronounce that last name there. It's kind of like a basic Mario engine for a Game Maker. And because he had it out there for everyone, so I took a look at it, started playing around with it, and I was like, man, this is way more advanced than what I have. I was like, can I actually use this? And the guy allows anyone to use it, just put it in the credits, or put his name in the credits. I was like, alright, cool. And so I started toying with it, figuring it out. So I integrated my combat engine that I had with that, tweaked it up a bit, which that eventually became something else, but not Distorted Travesty. So the sentries that you see in the data segment,
Yeah?
those are actually like very early game enemies in this other game. They were toned way down. You're kind of like this dungeon diver girl, and you very beginnings of the game you have to go and find this like gem or something. When you're coming out, when these other guys come in, and you have to like kind of dodge around them. Anyway, that's not important. But it did have the same spell system Distorted Travesty had. That first boss in Distorted Travesty is actually the first boss in that. Again, tweaked up a bit. Because you're like in this underground cave, so that's where the whole rocks thing came from. So the rocks don't make sense in Distorted Travesty. That's also why the sentries were made first, because they were made for a different game, and just kind of tweaked them up a little more for Distorted Travesty. So the reason I dropped the other game was story related. Anyone who's played Distorted Travesty knows I am a terrible writer, and I know that. So like the kind of story I want to write is a sensitive topic, and I thought I am going to butcher this. I need to do something that's not story driven.
I thought you were pretty funny.
Well, as far as just my writing is awful. I think so, and a lot of other people have said that. The other game's spell system was actually going to be based around puzzle solving, and then it kind of switched over to combat for Distorted Travesty, which it didn't work very well, which we've seen by the many Let's Plays. Some of those things don't quite work well in the game. So where did I start? I kind of didn't answer that. So where did it start? It started with basic platform thing. Toyed around with things, and then I wrote down this little fun story about video games, and there we go. It surprised me the most when feedback for the first game was people getting into the story. Because the story really was only there just to justify going from point A to point B. around Blackrock it started to pick up a bit, but
You used muffins.
yeah, the whole thing is absurd, and that was the whole idea. It wasn't supposed to be serious. You can definitely tell that with some of the weird things in there. The original idea, actually, and I don't think I've ever said this before, it wasn't actually a computer simulation. It was actually like merged video game worlds, and I'm like, this is stupid, and it sounds way too much like Kingdom Hearts. So I changed it. Well, I actually, when I made the first few areas, right up to the Castlevania area, it was right there. I was like, okay, I need to rewrite this. Because I was actually, a bit of the pieces of the dialogue in those beginning areas, I decided to just leave them as they were. Whether or not that's good or bad, probably really, really bad. So you can see pieces of the other story there, and that's why certain bits of dialogue in the beginning, in retrospect, there it doesn't make any sense.
I just assumed that the characters didn't know what the hell was going on at first.
No, it just doesn't make sense. There's a couple other plot holes that I'm really surprised that nobody's ever pointed out to me. Like, before they get thrown into the program, how is Jerry able to summon up fireballs or summon up rocks out of the air in the real world? Because in the beginning, the tutorial level, wouldn't they be in the real world? So people can come up with their own little theories on that, but nobody's ever thrown that at me like, this doesn't make sense, which I'm surprised at.
He was supposed to be in the real world in that first level?
Is he? Who knows?
In
the program. See, I'm kind of leaving that up to the interpretation of the player. I never really go into that in the actual story. And there's a couple other little plot holes there, if people want to find them. There's that, and one other that I left in purposely just for the hell of it. Not doing that anymore because I find that a really bad idea, but at this point I'm not going to go back and change that dialogue.
What was the hardest part of making the game?
Partially the coding for the AI, or mainly for bosses. The enemies, well, in the first game are very, very simple, as you guys see. The sentries are a little more advanced. They're not that more advanced, much more advanced. The shrouds are probably the most advanced, like, normal or non-boss enemy in the game, but they actually kind of work together, which having them work together was kind of back then anyway, I remember being harsh, because I was terrible at programming back then, and I still am. AI for the bosses got a little tricky at time. So these minor things like pitfalls, how big does it need to be? Like, should this pitfall be 6 times? Should it be 8 times? Where should this thing be? Should I move this trap over by a pixel? Or when I start getting to the nitty gritty of how fine-tuned I want things, that's really the hardest part of it. Definitely the most time-consuming part. Once the level's down and I actually see it playing out in front of me, and seeing, what doesn't actually work in my initial idea.
What would you consider to be the most important aspect of game design?
So in my text interview, I used the phrase finding the fun to be the most important, and back then that was my focus. But lately, within the past year, I've actually found that to be an incorrect way to go about it. Instead, finding ways of engaging the player, not necessarily only finding the fun. And instead of going into this, I'm actually going to redirect people to something that James said on an extra credits thing. It's the episode, season 5, episode 8, titled Beyond Fun. You can give a link there to the audience, but I would basically just be rehashing what he says there. He gives a really good analysis on that and why we shouldn't be focused on just finding fun.
What was the most important thing you learned from making Distorted Travesty?
Man, I learned tons of things from making that, especially from the feedback. Kind of a hard one to answer, the most important thing there. I can't say what I disliked most of though. It's actually the spell system. Not the spells themselves, but how you swap them out. It doesn't feel right. I go back to it and having to always swap the element out. Like, I want to use wind, I don't want fire, so that's 2 button presses to get the wind and fire. It feels... It's really cumbersome. And then switching out spells, you have to go into the menu, switch the spell out, or you have that other little button thing that I can design you can use later on, but I mean that's even more cumbersome. It's just too much. And even without that there, let's say that wasn't there, menu diving isn't fun. It just isn't. I designed the thing out or around, going into the menu, finding the spell, that's not good. That's terrible. So, that's one of the things I want to fix up with the third game. And obviously the second one, there's no menu diving, which on menus and interfaces, menus should be designed with not being there. best interface is one that's non-existent. And menus, they need to be navigated as quick as possible with as few button presses as possible. Which is one of the reasons why I put in that thing about remembering the menu position, so someone's got to constantly check the map. They can just open it, look at the map, and close it. So yeah, not making things cumbersome was probably the biggest thing I learned from that. And I knew that before going into it, I just didn't put it into practice. For example, the third Distorted Travesty, the only thing that the player's ever going to go into the menu for, assigning those ability points, that's it. Yeah, switching equipment, but that's pretty rare. And again, I locked off equipment switching, again, on like boss encounters. There's a couple other places that blocks that stuff out too. And again, items are again disabled during boss fights again. So people have asked me, why are items disabled on bosses? And the bosses in Distorted Travesty are designed around you not having to heal. I usually give the player roughly 7 to 8 mistakes per boss fight.
I never expected to see Alan Walker in any game outside a D. Grayman licensed game, or possibly a crossover fighting game. He is awesome, but why did you choose his sprites?
So I was just searching around for just a couple characters that I could use in Distorted Travesty, and I stumbled upon that on Spriter's resource. I was looking at some of the animations and I thought, well, this actually works really, really well. Kind of like the mood I'm going for this character. The movie kind of worked well, and so with that, I had no idea what D. Grayman was, by the way, at that time. It wasn't until I saw a comment on the one place that I actually talked about the game. I never actually advertised the game anywhere. All the stuff you see about the game everywhere except for one place, an obscure place of the internet, that everything else is by someone else that's a fan of the game, which is really nifty. But anyway, so someone there commented like, why is there a guy from D. Grayman? Of course, I had to go look up D. Grayman because I had no idea what that was, so there it was. So yeah, why it was just more because it just kind of matched the style. And I still haven't seen the anime yet. My roommate Jerry has been meaning to get that so we can watch it, but we're a little afraid that might be a little awkward. I've seen parts of Black Cat, which that's not awkward, but I think D. Grayman, like every time I see like clips of the show, I started going, this is kind of awkward now.
That's not the character I've been writing all this time.
Yeah, I don't know, it just feels weird seeing it when I've been using that sprite for this for so long. And of course I had to write it off after I, terribly wrote it off. But for some reason people thought that was humorous.
About how long did it take you to put Distorted Travesty together?
It's about 1.5 years. The game, when I actually started making the game's content, not stuff from those other games. When the engine was put together, it was actually started right at the beginning of February of 2009, and then it ended November 2010, actually on that month. But it was on the Beachhouse page, which is...
Okay. How about Distorted Travesty 2, the sequel to the prequel?
That one is about 3.5 months, and I really, really wanted to finish it in like a month, but I was super busy around that time, so I only got an hour every other day to work on it. I didn't get much time to work on it when I wanted to. I started making that one in January of 2011, and then it ended in April of 2011.
How long have you been working on Distorted Travesty 3, and how close is it to completion?
I started that one last year. Yeah, April of 2011. Like, right after the second game was finished, I started right there, because the story of the third game was all, how I wanted everything to progress was all done before Distorted Travesty 2 was even started. Right when I started the second one, I was like, alright, I know how this is going to go. And it's been going on until now, and projected that I'll finish it late next year, 2013. The game's broken up into chapters, which is awesome. So that's easy. It's kind of easy to have those breaking points there, know where things go. There are 21 chapters in the game. 8 of them are completely done, and the other chapters are bits and pieces of the content made. But most of the content that I make, I usually make it in order. That's, well, at least the content that I finish, like completely, it's all done in order. With little bits out of the order, like the sentries. Those were done before the game was even started on the first game. Sometimes bosses are made way in advance when I know what I'm going to do with them. Like the fight with X was made a bit early. Most of his AI was made when Metropolis was actually started. before that intro stage was even done.
What about the patch that you recently added? About how long did that take?
About a month or so. I think a little less than a month actually. Which was the patch added those 2 levels of the boss fight. It changed up the ending sequence quite a bit and just fixed up numerous issues that the game originally had. Mainly that final level. A lot of people flat out hated that level, and for good reason. Mainly Area 5. When I replayed it, I just didn't like it when I came back to it. It just felt long. So went back there and just kind of eased things up, kind of made it flow a little better. Probably a major change that people saw was the cooldown on Blast Off. It used to be about 2 seconds. I cut off about half a second from that, which was huge. I've gotten some feedback on random element of the 4-1, the Tetris level. People don't really like the random aspect to it, so I'm probably going to go back and change that. The positioning of everything is always fixed where things fall. They always fall in a certain sequence, but the actual pieces themselves and their rotation has always been random. So except for those 4 sport pieces that you see, probably going to go back and change that. The reason I made it random though, I felt that the way Claire's abilities worked, her mobility, the way she could just kind of go between things, I felt that random nature of that level wouldn't really get in the way of that too much. But I can see the frustration there, so in the next patch, or well, I might be patching it pretty soon after this, there's a couple issues, especially that, pretty sure you saw the bug that Raocow ran into with the shooter stage where you can click and put down enemies. That's not supposed to be that. That was a testing thing for me, so I can test positioning and things like that, and scoreboards. That's not supposed to be that bad. I about slammed my face into the wall when I saw that. That was terrible. And then, of course, his score didn't reset, which is actually a bug that came about from the change with the scoring system, and I just completely forgot about that. So I'll probably re-release a patch pretty quick just to fix that issue, and then if I do go back, I'll make the sequence in that level an actual sequence, right? 4-1.
How many hours a week do you spend on average game making?
Yeah, this kind of fluctuates quite a bit. Right now, I spend no time at all because Borderlands 2. But when I'm not playing Borderlands 2, I spent the last 10 days playing that game. I'd say about 15 hours a week right now. The time of the original interview, when you had me answering these questions through text, it was about 8 to 12. But it just depends. Sometimes I can get in just a couple hours, maybe 2 or 3. And then there's a couple weeks where I get full time on there. I get like 40-something hours on there.
So, Distorted Travesty 3, care to talk a little about its general design and how it's different from the previous titles?
No.
Okay. We'll just stop the video here then.
Just right there. Just here we go. No, so how is it different? Well, the controls are way tighter, which will make everyone happy. Everyone talks about slippery controls. When I started watching Raocow's videos there, all the comments are on like, the slippery controls. And they are totally right. Luckily, I had already made a note of that and started making the third game way before that. So anyway, so Gary's controls are almost Mega Man-like. He stops when you stop. He goes really quick. He doesn't have a lot of startup time like he did in the first game. The first game there is a subtle startup time there. You have the 2 different characters you can play as. You can play as both Jerry and Claire. Anyways, both the demo or seeing stuff, they know about that. And Claire actually retains the previous game, the slippery controls. Jerry's dashes are a lot different. For his forward dash, he kind of dashes around Mega Man X. As far as just basic mechanics, that's the biggest difference there. You'll start seeing. I'm pretty sure people will love the Jerry's movements when they're super tight. So, but how don't make the diving, get to the abilities was kind of cumbersome. You keep switching elements all the time. It was just there's too much of that.
Yeah.
So the third game was designed around not having to do that all the time. There is a bit of that ability switching, and then every once in a while switching characters, but you're not going to be switching to fire, landing back water, or something crazy thing. You're not doing zigzagging around your controls just to do one thing.
I kinda noticed that a lot of the puzzles in Distorted Travesty, it's like I keep having to open my menu within the same puzzle.
Exactly, or one enemy's weak to wind, and then you have to finish on water to be the most effective. That was silly. And I thought this would be cool, and I go back and it sucked. So it was still in the game for some reason. So there's not a lot of that. I mean, every once in a while I'll have the players switch between an ability or switch between characters in a third game, and there will be things designed around that, but it's not going to have you constantly switching back and forth. So in the third game, you start out with nothing, absolutely nothing. You can't even jump, which when I describe it to people, they're like, wait, that's a platform. I'm like, you can't jump up.
Yeah, that's kind of my reaction when I hear that too, but I have to see how it's executed.
Yeah, and for a good portion of the game, you don't actually have the dashing, which was like the core mechanic behind the first and second game, was that invulnerability time. So that was kind of weird to make that. I was so used to seeing sort of strategy and design around dashing, and then so making these levels at the beginning, not having that, I had to think, okay, the player doesn't have that yet, so make sure I don't go too crazy here. So what it is, they gain abilities from other video game characters. Jerry gets like a set to use like ability from Link. He gets like a sword, some arrows and bombs. Claire's first one, she gets it from the Castlevania series. So she gets like a whip. She gets some of the items like the dagger and the holy water. And it kind of expands like that. Jerry gets to use X-Buster. It's not limited to one area. You can use that anywhere once you get it. And it's not overpowered, actually. But the best way to go is not always to use X-Buster and blast everything away. But the numbers were the hardest thing to work on that system there. Making sure that one thing is not overpowered. They tried to make it so the damage output for all of them are roughly the same. But the idea is that people would play with the set that they able to call. But the game does want you to switch matter once in a while and use what works best. But you don't have to. As we've seen with Roundcast videos, you can use water on a water resistant enemy and still beat them with enough persistence.
It's kind of funny the way he plays, because I'm just like, that's not how I played that.
It's nice to see that, I like seeing people use their own style, so that was kind of fun there. Where I got the idea for the using different video game characters' abilities, so way back, I come up to an obstacle in a game, and there's something that was just how to reach. Just couldn't get past this obstacle very well. It's kind of hard, with the game's mechanics, it's hard to get by it. I kept thinking, if I could just borrow like abilities from some other game, I could just get to that a little easier. And then I thought, what if there was a game where you could borrow abilities from other games? So that's kind of what spawned off the idea there. That's actually was going to be the idea of the first game. You saw how that went. So I kind of shifted gears there.
It seems like it's, kind of natural, considering that your characters are, after all, cosplayers. You can apparently get the powers of whatever they cosplay as. So it seems pretty natural to me. Just like, hey, I found Link's hat. I'm suddenly a swordmaster now.
Right.
Hey, bombs. We should be worried if they ever get into Kirby.
With the third game, I thought about using Kirby when I was thinking about how that would work. Like, this is a lot to do. There's like enemies are actually categorized by like affiliation. Like all the enemies that are related to Mario, they're all a Mario type enemy. And I thought, okay, so if they steal the power from a Mario enemy, all those would always spawn with the same ability. And I thought of ways to like balance it out. I thought, okay, well, in Kirby, he actually ate the enemy. And that was like an instant kill. And I thought, well, for just sort of travesty, that's a bit overpowered the way the game's set up.
I'm just imagining, like, well, you'd have to kill the enemy and then eat them to balance it. But I'm just trying to picture Claire just having her mouth open, like her jaw just unhinged, and just...
I thought about Jerry's last set that he gets, but I didn't go there. I thought maybe kill the enemy and you can steal something, or you just use something on them and gain their power. But yeah, I didn't go with that at all. Something else. I want something else for the third one for him. Claire's last ability set, I'm gonna keep that a secret until the game comes out. It's humorous if you know the source.
Surprise! She can do the Battletoads random foot and fist transformations and headbutts.
It's kind of on that thing there. It's not actually going to use what this game does, but if you know the original source, that's what's going to first come to your head. You'll know. You'll know when you see it. The testers all laughed at it.
Surprise, she gets a jet bike from Battletoads. Now the game's 500 times harder! Damn!
There is a motorbike section in the third game.
I always thought that it would make an awesome bonus section for a video game, where like you put like coins and rupees and lives or whatever your game's resources are, and you just, as soon as you hit a wall, you've exited the bonus stage, and just gotten whatever you grabbed.
You go.
I've always thought that'd be a cool bonus stage.
There is actually a hidden room in the first game. It doesn't do anything. It just says you must have cheated to get here, or I don't remember what it says. Yeah, there's a little hidden room that points out that you had to kind of cheese some of the mechanics in the game to get there. Totally legit way to get there, though. I don't know if anybody's ever found it, though. Give you a hint. It's in the very final level. It's before the Metroid scene. It's right before the artist fight.
What advice would you give those starting their own fan or indie games?
Oh man, the biggest one, learn from your mistakes. Always learn from your mistakes. There's lots to make. Everything you do can be a learning experience. Don't think something's wasted if you toss something out. Think about what you learned from that. See if you can take something out of that. Another thing is refine your stuff over and over again. Just keep tuning it up. You know, go back in there, play test your stuff, see where those problems are. And then, of course, you get other people to test your stuff and, you know, really listen to their feedback, because your viewpoint on your game is going to be very, very skewed. You're not going to see it from a player standpoint. It's impossible to. It really is. There's no way for me to see my game from a player perspective like anybody else could. And you don't always have to use every suggestion that people give, but like, suggestions and like opinions from other people are super, super important. Don't use sprite rips. That's gonna sound weird coming from me. No, really. I mean, if you can make your own stuff, or if you have someone who can work with you, make stuff for you, definitely go with that. Team up with people if you can, who kind of share your goal. Make something completely original. Don't make Distorted Travesty. It's all about sprite rips.
But I like Distorted Travesty.
I'm semi actually against sprite rips, but I'm not. I don't know. It's a nifty concept. Raukhouse said something that was kind of nifty one time. He said something about how he likes games that use resources from other things. He kind of likes seeing when things are reused. And he sees something like VGMusic.com or Spriter's Resource. They have all these different resources that people can, giant pool of resources that people can get if they ever need it. Really nifty. Definitely the most important advice I think I can give is you need to have fun doing it. You know, have fun making your game. Really. Games should be fun, and making games should be fun.
Anything else you want to say?
Cannot think of much.
Check me out at my blog.
Yeah.
I'll provide the links. I'll throw it in the video's description, a link to your blog, and actually, yeah, I think just your blog. That's the whole thing, right?
Pretty much.
All the downloads and everything are there.